Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed like it was a business negotiation. "I think we should take a break," she said. I didn't flinch. Didn't ask why. Just nodded. Sure. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to agree. Like her words were supposed to trigger panic, questions, maybe even a promise to do better. But there was none of that. Because by the time she said it out loud, I had already left the relationship in my mind. She just hadn't noticed. She wanted a break? Fine. I gave her space, and then I gave her forever. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just started the clock. Because when someone tells you they want out without saying the words directly, all you have to do is step out of the frame and let them see what life looks like without you in it. She packed a small bag. Said she'd be at her sister's for a while. Needed time to think. Needed clarity. I didn't argue. Didn't even ask when she'd be back. The silence confused her. She expected resistance. Expected tears. But I wasn't going to give her the emotional theater she wanted. She left on a Thursday. I remember because it rained at night, and I watched the water slide down the living room window while eating takeout alone. And I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. It wasn't grief. It wasn't relief. It was confirmation. She walked out with the confidence of someone who believed the door would stay open. But here's the part she didn't see coming. By the time she turned around, the lock had changed. The next morning, I made a few quiet moves. Subtle things. Unlinked our shared calendar. Canceled a vacation she had postponed 3 times. Changed my emergency contact form at work. I didn't call her. Didn't post anything. Just moved. She had been my gravity for too long. But now, I was floating, and it felt like freedom. Friends texted to check in. I didn't explain anything. I wasn't interested in crafting a narrative. Because this time, the story wasn't about her. It was about me. And I wasn't wasting another chapter on someone who treated commitment like a convenience. I kept the house neat. Stopped scrolling through old photos. Started working out again. Each day felt less like recovery and more like awakening. She had called it a break. I called it the beginning. And when she finally did return, when she walked through the same door expecting to resume the life she paused, she found out the man she left behind was no longer there. And the man standing in his place wasn't hers to talk to anymore. The first 3 days after she left were silent. No calls. No texts. She was probably expecting me to break the quiet. That was always our pattern. She pulled away. I pulled harder. She went cold. I overcompensated. A rhythm she thought she had mastered. Not this time. This time, I didn't follow. Because what she mistook for strength, the ability to walk away, was really just avoidance. She didn't want to fix anything. She wanted space where she could rewrite the rules. Reframe herself as the misunderstood one. The confused partner trying to sort things out. But confusion isn't what destroys relationships. Indecision does. And she had made hers the moment she left. On the surface, nothing changed. I went to work. Answered emails. Cooked. Slept. But beneath it, something had cracked wide open. I started looking around our home differently. It wasn't ours anymore. Just mine. I cleared out the bathroom drawers. Boxed up the products she'd left behind. Took down the Polaroid collage in the hallway. Not out of anger. Just accuracy. I was updating the reality. Every little thing I removed made more room for air. By the 4th day, I'd moved all her shoes to the garage. Her coats, too. I didn't touch her closet, yet, but I was measuring the weight of each step carefully. Not rushed. Just intentional. On the 5th night, I reactivated an old group chat with friends I hadn't seen in a year. They were surprised to hear from me. I didn't explain why. I just showed up at the bar 2 nights later like I hadn't missed a beat. We talked about everything except her. Because she wasn't part of this version of me anymore. The next morning, I went for a run. Cold wind, empty streets, music off. I didn't need distraction. I needed rhythm. That's the thing about space. When you stop resisting it, it becomes structure. And that structure? It builds clarity faster than any argument ever could. Day 7, she called. First time since she left. I watched the screen light up. Her name's still there. But it felt foreign now. Like a number that used to belong to someone I used to know. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Said she missed me. That she hoped we could talk soon. That she was starting to understand some things. That's how she put it. Starting. But I was already finished. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through an old folder on my computer. One labeled, Us. Vacations. Smiles. Posed happiness. I hovered over the delete button, then paused. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I didn't need to. She no longer lived there. Not in those moments. Not in that version of me. I closed the folder. Didn't touch it again. Because sometimes the real power isn't in deleting the past. It's in no longer needing it to prove anything. When she left, she thought she was taking the time to figure things out. But all she really did was give me the space to finally see her clearly. And once you see someone without the lens of love, you stop waiting for their return. Because they're already gone. On day 10, I cleaned the garage. It might sound like nothing, but it was symbolic. That garage had been her domain just as much as the kitchen had once been mine. She stored her off-season clothes there, her decorations for holidays we never celebrated on time, her gym equipment she used 3 times and forgot. That morning, I didn't think. I just moved. I packed the boxes, labeled them, pushed them to one side. I made space. Not for her. For whatever would come next. She texted again that afternoon. Something casual. Asked if I'd eaten. Said she made lasagna with her sister and thought of me. I read the message. Didn't reply. Because I knew what that was, nostalgia dressed up as connection. An old trick. A soft landing she thought would reset the dynamic. She was still expecting the old rhythm. The one where she retreats, I pursue. Where her absence makes her more valuable. But not this time. This time, her absence was proof of her pattern. And I was done dancing around it. By day 12, I had booked a solo weekend away. A small cabin up north. Just me, silence, and the road. I didn't tell her. I didn't even tell my friends until I was already gone. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. No tension in my shoulders. No noise in my head. Just stillness. Because something had shifted. She hadn't just stepped out of my life for a break. She had stepped out of my belief system. And without realizing it, she gave me the most valuable thing a man can have. Distance. The kind of distance where you stop needing closure, because the behavior gave you all the answers. She sent another message that night. Longer this time. Apologetic. Said she'd been thinking. Said she missed my voice. Said maybe this break was a mistake. I left it on read. Not out of cruelty. Out of respect for myself. I wasn't going to reward absence with attention. I wasn't going to negotiate with someone who treated me like a backup plan. She thought this was about time apart. But it was about time wasted. Time spent explaining myself to someone who listened only when silence threatened her comfort. Time spent proving love to someone who measured it by how much I would tolerate. That time was over. The day I came back from the cabin, I walked through the front door and felt nothing. No trace of her. No echo of what we were. Just a space that no longer asked me to shrink. She called later that evening. This time, I picked up. Only because I knew it was time to end the loop. She asked if I'd be open to talking. To seeing where things could go. Said she didn't want to throw away what we had. I told her I agreed. We shouldn't throw it away. We should bury it. Because it died the day she decided love was something you pause when it's inconvenient. She didn't reply right away. Then she whispered, so that's it. I said nothing. Because the man she was talking to now wasn't the man she left behind. He didn't beg. He didn't chase. He changed. And once a man changes like that, you don't get him back. She came back on a Monday. Not to move in again, at least not officially. She said she just wanted to grab a few things. Claimed she'd be quick, wouldn't disturb anything. I told her the door would be open. When she walked in, the air shifted. She paused like the house didn't recognize her anymore. Like the walls had forgotten her presence. She looked around, expecting something. A fight. A question. A flicker of hope. She found none of it. I stayed seated on the couch, working. Didn't get up. Didn't greet her. Just nodded once and went back to what I was doing. It rattled her. She tried to make small talk. Pointed out that the furniture was moved. That the plants looked healthier. That I'd finally fixed the crooked frame in the hallway. She laughed nervously, like she was trying to pull me back into old rhythms. I didn't play along. She wandered through the kitchen, opened drawers she used to command, lingered near the fridge like she was waiting for a memory to reach out and grab her. But nothing came. Because I'd already stripped those memories of meaning. She walked into the bedroom next. That's where she froze. The bed was different. Sheets new. Her side, empty. Not just physically, but energetically. It didn't belong to her anymore. She didn't even try to pretend it did. I watched her from the hallway. Her reflection in the mirror said more than her words ever could. She wasn't seeing the end. She was standing in it. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. You really moved on, didn't you? I didn't answer. Because by the time someone asks that question, they already know. She tried to sit beside me on the couch. I didn't stop her, but I didn't turn toward her either. She told me she'd been thinking, that she rushed things, that she let her fear get louder than her love. Then she asked if I still believed we had something worth saving. I waited, measured the silence like a surgeon with a scalpel. Then I said one thing. We had something. Now we have history. She swallowed hard. That was the moment it hit her. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was simply done. And that's what scared her the most. Because anger she could fight. Pain she could manipulate. But stillness? Stillness was irreversible. She stayed for another hour. Moved slowly. Like she was trying to extend her presence in the space. Like the longer she lingered, the more likely something would click back into place. Nothing did. Before she left, she stood at the door and looked at me one last time. I didn't stand. Didn't say goodbye. Just let the moment pass. And when the door closed behind her, I exhaled. Not relief. Not regret. Just certainty. Because she had finally come back. Only to discover what she abandoned. Didn't wait for her return. It rebuilt itself. Without her. And this time, it locked the door. That week, she kept showing up. Not every day, but enough. Enough to test the waters. Enough to act like her presence still had gravity. She'd drop by to grab one more thing, linger longer than necessary, try to anchor herself in the routine she'd abandoned. Once, she brought coffee. Said she got an extra by accident. I took it. Didn't thank her. Not out of pettiness, but precision. Because every interaction had to be clear now. This wasn't a rekindling. This was closure, playing out in real time, scene by scene. She started asking how I'd been sleeping. If work was still busy. If I'd been seeing anyone. I answered in one-word responses. Not cold. Not aggressive. Just unreadable. She wasn't ready for that. She still thought I owed her vulnerability. She still believed there was something left to prove. But that version of me, the one who over-explained, who overextended, he was gone. In his place stood a man who'd already walked through the fire. And didn't flinch at the smoke anymore. One evening, she arrived unannounced. Said she just wanted to talk. I let her in. She paced the living room, trying to find her angle. Told me she'd been thinking about the good times. That relationships have seasons. That maybe we just hit a rough one. I stayed quiet. She kept going. She said she missed the way I used to look at her. That she didn't feel that look anymore. I told her that's because it wasn't there. She froze. Then asked if I was seeing someone. I said no. Then added, but I've never felt less alone. That landed. Hard. She sat down. Looked around the room like it belonged to a stranger. It did. Because every wall, every chair, every detail had been quietly reclaimed. She didn't recognize the space because it no longer made space for her. The next morning, I started removing the last of her things. The coat in the closet. The necklace on the bathroom counter. The backup key hidden behind the bookshelf. Not in anger. In preparation. Because this wasn't just about her leaving. It was about me leaving the version of myself that allowed her to come and go like she had a claim to my peace. And as I packed the last box, I realized something deeper. She hadn't returned because she loved me. She returned because she expected me to still need her. But what she never considered was what would happen when I stopped needing anyone who saw my loyalty as leverage. She thought I was waiting. I was already watching the exit. And the difference between those two is everything. The shift didn't start with me. It started with them. Her circle. Friends. Colleagues. Even family. The people who used to cheer for her, defend her, believe every story she fed them about how we needed space, and it was mutual. They started seeing through it. Because cracks, once they appear, widen fast. She slipped up one night at a mutual friend's gathering. She'd gone alone, thinking she still had the social leverage. That she could carry the narrative she'd been crafting. But people watch. And people talk. She came in loud, animated. Like nothing had changed. Someone asked about me, just casual small talk. She brushed it off. We're taking time. He'll come around. But something in her voice rang false. It didn't land the way it used to. That friend later texted me. Said she looked uncomfortable. Like she was performing a role she no longer believed in. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because when the mask starts to slip, you don't need to tear it off. You just step back and let it fall. At work, her energy shifted too. The charm she used to wield so easily started wearing thin. She got quieter. More distracted. Stopped posting her curated happy selfies. Even her online feed slowed down. I watched it all in silence. Because distance isn't always about physical space. Sometimes, it's letting someone feel the weight of their own absence from your life. No retaliation. No smear campaign. Just a mirror. And the mirror was doing its job. One day, a coworker of hers messaged me. Nothing dramatic, just said they missed seeing us together. That something felt off lately. I thanked them politely. But inside, I understood the power of what was happening. She wasn't being punished. She was being exposed. Not by me. By her own patterns. The inconsistencies. The emotional whiplash. The tendency to pull close, then disappear. It was all catching up. And people around her, those who once rooted for her, had started to notice. Meanwhile, I was building. Not loudly. Not for show. Just quietly reinvesting in myself. I started training again. Not for looks, discipline. Reconnected with mentors I hadn't spoken to in years. Took on new projects. Said yes to a speaking event she used to downplay. She saw the photos. I know she did. I didn't block her. I just stopped curating anything for her to see. That's the most honest form of removal, when you no longer adjust your life to trigger, impress, or convince. You just live. And the silence that follows speaks louder than any confrontation. She tried to reach out again, this time through a friend. Said she wasn't sure how to fix things. But it was never her job to fix anything. It was her job not to break what she wasn't willing to repair. And now? Now she was standing in the ruins alone. Because when the people around you stop clapping, you finally hear the echo of your own choices. And it's deafening. She called on a Sunday. Midday. Sunlight pouring through the windows, music playing low in the background. I was cutting fruit, barefoot, calm. She asked if we could meet. Not to argue. Not to talk. Just to sit. Just to feel whatever was left. I agreed. Not because I needed it, but because I was ready to show her what real distance looked like up close. We met at a quiet cafe we used to like. She arrived first, seated near the back, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm coffee she wasn't drinking. When I walked in, she stood halfway, like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or apologize. I nodded once. Sat down. She looked tired. Not physically. Soul-tired. Like someone who had spent weeks trying to reverse time with charm and memory and failed. She started slowly. Said she hadn't expected space to feel so permanent. That she thought we were just giving each other time, not an ending. She said she missed me. Missed the way I listened. The way I anchored everything. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't there to rescue her from the silence. I was there to honor it. She leaned forward, her voice softer. Said she didn't know what she'd been thinking. That everything just felt heavy, and she panicked. Said she thought I'd always be there, even if she stepped away. That last line? That was the one. Because it told me everything. She didn't miss me. She missed the security of my presence. The quiet safety of knowing I'd never leave, no matter how many times she distanced herself. I let her speak. Every sentence felt like a door closing behind her. Not because she was saying the wrong things, but because I was no longer the man those words were meant to reach. When she asked if I could ever see us rebuilding, I looked her straight in the eye and told her the truth. I don't live there anymore. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just sat back in her chair, lips pressed together, as the finality settled in. And that was the difference between us. She came to reconnect. I came to release. There was no anger in me. No resentment. Just clarity. I paid for the drinks. She offered to walk with me afterward. I declined. Not because I was cruel. Because endings don't need aftercare. I watched her walk to her car. Her steps were slower now. Unsure. She paused at the driver's side, maybe expecting I'd call out. I didn't. She pulled away. And just like that, the loop was closed. Later that night, I sat on the porch again. Same chair. Same stillness. Only this time, it wasn't a man recovering. It was a man restored. Because when she finally reached for me, she found nothing but air. Not because I vanished, but because I'd already walked too far to turn back. The silence after that last meeting wasn't awkward. It was sacred. For the first time in months, everything felt aligned. No confusion. No second guessing. No late night loops wondering what I could have said differently. Because I didn't just survive the separation, I mastered it. She texted one more time that week. Just a short line. I wish things were different. But they weren't. And wishing is just nostalgia in disguise. It doesn't build. It clings. I left the message on read. That weekend, I started rearranging my space again. Not for aesthetic. For ownership. I painted the hallway a new color. Donated the couch we picked out together. Tore down the calendars she used to write on. Every detail was intentional. Not to erase her, but to make room for a life where she no longer lived. I wasn't angry. I was exact. Friends began noticing the shift. One of them, Marcus, pulled me aside after a gym session. Said I looked lighter. Asked if I was seeing someone. I told him no. But I was finally seeing myself. That was enough. Meanwhile, she kept trying to orbit. Quietly. Liking posts, sending occasional memories. Never direct. Always suggestive. Like she was casting fishing lines, hoping I'd bite. I never did. Because she didn't lose me. She released me. That's the part they never understand. When you walk away from a man who loved you deeply, you don't get to dictate how or if he returns. Especially when he rebuilds in your absence. Especially when the man you left starts becoming the man you no longer deserve. I had stopped talking about her. Not because I suppressed anything, but because she had become irrelevant to the story I was now writing. The one where peace wasn't a reaction, it was the default. The one where I wasn't recovering, I was redefining. That Sunday, I ran into her friend at a bookstore. She looked surprised to see me. Said I looked centered. Said she heard about everything. I nodded. Didn't offer details. She asked if I hated her for leaving. I said no. Because hate requires space in your chest. And I had emptied every corner she used to occupy. Her friend paused, then smiled softly. Said, she still talks about you like you're coming back. I didn't respond. Because some truths don't need confirmation. They just need distance. And I had miles of it now. That night, as I walked home, I passed the restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary. It was still open. Still busy. But I didn't stop. Didn't look inside. Because when you finally close the loop, the memories don't haunt. They just pass. She had her time. She had her choices. And now? I had mine. And none of them included going back. The unraveling wasn't loud. It never is. It started with whispers. Comments from mutual friends. Stories trickling in sideways. She hasn't been the same. She looks tired. She asked about you again. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer owed her understanding. Sometimes, silence is the only language that speaks the full truth. I heard she'd quit her job. No warning. Just stopped showing up. Her coworkers said she'd been distracted for weeks. Withdrawn. Not rude. Just empty. People noticed. That woman who used to command rooms with ease? She'd shrunk. Her confidence unraveled, thread by thread. She started disappearing from social media, too. Posts went from curated vacations and inspirational quotes to nothing at all. Stories vanished. Comments stopped. Even her friends pulled back. One by one. Not because they turned on her, but because even they could feel the weight of a woman trying to pretend she hadn't destroyed something she once prayed for. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need you to defend it. It just waits. And eventually, it shows up without knocking. I never gloated. Never told anyone what really happened. Never shared the messages, the voicemail, the slow collapse of everything she thought was unshakable. Because real strength doesn't need applause. It needs peace. And I had plenty of it. By then, I'd moved forward in ways she would never understand. I was mentoring again. Traveling solo. Building things not out of revenge, but out of restoration. She tried reaching out one more time. Not with words. With a photo. One we took 2 years ago. Sent with no caption. I stared at it for a long minute. Then deleted it. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I already had. Later that week, I saw her in passing. She was sitting outside a coffee shop, alone. Hair pulled back. Sunglasses on. But I recognized the posture. The stillness of someone who no longer knows how to move without the person they expected to return. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did. But she didn't call out. Didn't wave. Because even she finally understood. There's a type of silence that isn't cold. It's final. The kind that wraps itself around a goodbye you never expected. The kind that doesn't need closure. Because it is the closure. Her world didn't shatter overnight. It cracked slowly. Each day without my presence. Each room she entered without my support. Each choice she revisited in her mind, wondering where exactly it started to fall apart. But I didn't give her answers. That's not my job anymore. My job was done the moment I stopped waiting for her to realize my value. And started building a life where I no longer needed to prove it. She had made her choice. She had played her hand. Now she was sitting with the consequences. While I was standing in my calm. Unbothered. Unreachable. Unreturned. Closure didn't come with a final conversation. It came with peace. A kind of peace that didn't require anyone's permission. A quiet certainty that I owed nothing further to her, to the past, or to the version of me that once tolerated being treated like an option. I remember the exact moment it all sealed shut. I was standing in front of a mirror. Different haircut, different posture, a different man. And I didn't see sadness in my reflection. I saw freedom. Because once you outgrow someone's chaos, their silence stops feeling like punishment. It starts to feel like protection. She never tried again after that last photo. Not directly, but I know she watched from the sidelines. The story she thought she controlled slipped from her hands. She told people we were on a break. They watched me become a man who no longer broke. She told herself I'd come back, and then realized the version of me she remembered no longer existed. He evolved the second she stepped out. Not in anger, not in haste, in silence. Calculated, deliberate silence. She expected noise, expected begging, confrontation, a scene. But all she got was a man walking away without looking over his shoulder. And that's what finally broke her. Because people don't fear endings. They fear being replaced by peace. And I wasn't loud about it. I didn't announce my glow up. Didn't flaunt anything. I just lived. I rebuilt my habits. Took new trips. Reconnected with old passions that had nothing to do with her. And when people asked, I didn't speak of her with bitterness. I spoke of her with absence. Because the opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And I'd reached that level. She once said I was the calm in her storm. What she never realized. She was the storm. And storms don't miss what they destroy. But the ground remembers. And this ground, this man, rebuilt stronger. Now, when I pass familiar places, I don't flinch. Restaurants, parks, her old apartment building. They hold no power. Because memory without emotion is just information. And all that data now lives in a closed file. Labeled, lesson. She tried to take space. I gave her silence. She tried to take time. I gave her forever. And she thought I disappeared. But I didn't. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And once you learn that lesson, you never forget it. Not when you walk into new rooms with your shoulders back. Not when you lie down at night without tension. Not when you finally understand. You don't heal by returning. You heal by never needing to. So no. I didn't vanish. I simply chose peace. And peace doesn't beg to be understood. It just walks out. And never looks back. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.